And we are live. Welcome, folks, to episode 3817 of the Survival Podcast. And today's episode is called Mental Sovereignty in the Golden Age of Propaganda. And if you hear me say, and we are live, and you're like, this dude doesn't know what's going on. He's a podcaster. He puts his shit on Apple and Spotify and Pocket Casts and everything like that. You should know that we actually do live streams, usually 3 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Expert panel shows we usually don't because of the way those shows are put together. But we have a live almost every day of the week, like 3 out of the 5 work days of the week. We have a live. But how do I find out about the live? Well, you can always go to tspclive.com, tspclive.com, and you'll see the next upcoming live or the announcement from the last one because I haven't updated the next one yet. But the best way to always be able to make sure you can get on the live isn't if you're on YouTube to click subscribe and the like button and the bell and all that. You should do that, but don't rely on it. Yours truly has been shadow banned for over a decade at least here on YouTube, but more like about 13 years if I have the calculation right. So that's always stifled channel growth, and lots of people never know that we actually are putting content all the time. But the way you get an announcement for just about everything, but certainly when we're going to go live, usually about 2 or 3 hours before it happens, go to thesurvivalpodcast.com, click on Get Social, and you'll see our Telegram announcement channel, among other options there. But that's the one you'll always get the message because I'll always send the message, so you'll always get the message. It's like direct communication that way. But if you do the channel instead of the group, you'll only hear from me, and you won't have to deal with everybody else having detailed conversations if you don't want that, or join the whole community. And if you're new here and you tuned into this channel today and you're like, who's this jackass? My name is Jack Spirico, so I am at least the Jack of the Jackass, and I have been doing this for about 18 years. This is, again, our 3817th episode of the show. We're a 2-time Podcast of the Year award winner. You can find out more of us at our website, thesurvivalpodcast.com. Subscribe on any platform or follow us here on YouTube. And if you're new to podcasting and you're more like a YouTuber, watcher type thing, give us a shot. You might like it. We're going to have a really interesting show, I think, today on this topic of propaganda. And I want you to notice 2 things. It's a golden age of propaganda, as I called it, but I also said the golden age, not a golden age. Because I believe that we live at a time when we have never had propaganda thrown at us at the volume and with the efficacy that we do today. And it's not because, like, whoa, ha, 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 right? Like the New World Order or whatever, like, I don't even say that's not a thing. I'm just saying that's not why. We have had psychopaths running society for as long as there's been society. It's generally the psychopaths and the sociopaths that assemble society into an organized set of rules so that they can prosper by not working while everybody else carries their fat asses around. That's how it usually tends to work. And if you're a political person and you're also new here and you're like, oh, this guy a communist or something? No, that's just another form of that, okay? We won't talk about what I am today. I'm just going to tell you that propaganda to control the masses is so old that, Stoics wrote of it during the Roman Republic thousands of years ago. I don't remember who it was, but one of the Stoics said something about the ease of moving the crowd with a few words is so remarkable that it resembles the beauty of a wave through the sea. I'm paraphrasing there. So it's nothing new. What's new is how. There's never been a time where the people that want to propagandize you have had so many tools, ways, and mediums to get the propaganda into your brain. And so we're going to start out today's show with about 150 years of history that we're going to blow through in about 15 minutes. We're going to talk about all of the developments of communications that have been harnessed as propaganda tools over that 150-year period, culminating with things like influencers, short-form video, AI-driven and curated content, et cetera, that we're dealing with today. We're going to bookend that to understand it. And then we're going to go through about 12 tips to be able to use these tools to actually get to the truth, even though they are the tools of propagandists. Coming at it from the mindset is if your enemy has a weapon, you can't afford to ignore the weapon. You need an equal or better weapon and then better tactics to confront your enemy with. And the reality is giving up the sources of information and technology that are available today is not really an option unless you want to go off and live like in a little 10 by 10 Unabomber style shack in the woods. And if you want to do that, that's fine. But I assume if you're listening to this show, that's not what you want to do. Because if you wanted to do that, you wouldn't be sitting here watching me on YouTube. And with that, guys, even though we've just started, I'm going to have to pause because you hear it. You hear her, don't you? There she is. I'm going to shit on the floor bark. I'll be right back. Damn it. You're so fucking annoying. You're staying out. Sorry about that. I really am. It's spring break. The kids are with Dorothy, or Dorothy's with the kids. So I'm alone, and the dog just loves to do that to me. Anyway, we're going to go through that. What I was saying is, it is not really a viable option today to give up using technology and communications and information sources. What we have to do is filter through it and get it done correctly. And so we're going to do that today. Before we do, let's go ahead and hear from our sponsors of the day. Here's our unofficial sponsor today. People are asking me what I was drinking in the last couple episodes, noticing I have this can. I'm like, are you like on an energy drink kick or something? No, man, I try to stay as natural as I can. This is actually a brand of kombucha called Liquid Remedy. And I've always liked kombucha, but I'm not big on, and I don't get anything for this, by the way. I'm not big on the sugar. And most kombucha has quite a bit of sugar in it so that it tastes good. Otherwise, it kind of tastes more like vinegar. It needs something to lighten it. This is made like any kombucha. It's just fermented much longer, so it completely ferments out the carbohydrate. And then they back sweeten it with just a little bit of erythritol. So it may not be as sweet as what you're accustomed to, but if you like kombucha, you might like this. I've thought about starting to make it myself, but that would be one more thing to do. So that's what it is for now. Anyway, with that, let's go ahead and talk about our actual sponsors today. Sponsor today, number one today, is Canine Academy. That is Joel Riles' company. It's like a sister company to Fortress Canine, where he breeds, sells, and trains some of the finest protection dogs in the industry. You can check that out too. But at canineacademy.us, you learn how to train yourself to train your dog. You have all these great courses you can take. They're very, very affordable. The basics course is something everybody should do. It'll make you a better dog trainer, a better dog owner, a better doggy daddy or doggy mommy, however you want to put it. It'll just open up a lot of things to you that you are unaware about when it comes to training dogs. If you're not sure if it's right for you, you can also take the problem-solving library course. That's completely free, and it gives you a look at how the system works before you commit to it with money. So check it out today. Again, the website, canineacademy.us. Next up today is Above Phone, where you can rise above with the best privacy phones, laptops, and tablets on the market. It's a terrible thing. Like, we were talking about propaganda today, and that's the data that they push at you. But as they're pushing all that data at you, they're also gathering a lot of data from you, what you look at, what you pay attention to, where you go, how you get there, how long you spend looking at things, all types of things. In other words, your phone spies on you. The manufacturer of your phone is spying on you through your phone. The app manufacturers spy on you. Your carrier spies on you. And then the government doesn't have to spy on you, because the people that spy on you give the government all the data that they want for free, and they sell the rest of your data to anybody who'll buy it. This is a reality. I'm not making it up. It's not some crazy conspiracy theory or some stupid shit like that. This is all known and well out in the open. With Above Phone, you can take back your privacy. And if you need to use an app in particular that's not like in the private app store or something like that, you have to use it from Google Play, Apple, the Apple App Store, something like that. You can do that, but you can put that app inside kind of like a little jail. And that way it only can do the things that it does when you let it out. And when you're not using it, you put it away and it's all locked up. And again, you have your own private app store. And when you buy your device, you'll get an Above Phone expert that will give you a consultation call and onboard you to your new device. The Above books are great, though, because they come with a whole series of videos right on them that tell you everything you need to know anyway. Check them out today. And if you buy a phone at Above Phone, you'll get $75 off any phone, which is 1.5 years of membership in my membership program in and of itself. So check them out if you're an MSB member. If you're not, you're going to get one. Well, you'd be kind of foolish not to go ahead and buy MSB for a year for $50 when you're already going to get $75 off a phone. That means you hate money. Don't hate money. We teach you not. That's some good propaganda, right? Let's start with that. Like, not all propaganda is bad. Like, propaganda is a message that is designed to activate you toward a specific course of thought, deed, and action. All right, it's an activation is what it really is. It pulls at like your motivations and your emotions, and that can be bad. And you should always be able to then take that back and filter it through kind of the Vulcan filter of just logic. And if it still tracks, then it's worth doing. So not all propaganda necessarily is a lie, and not all of it is wrong. But if you don't know why you believe what you believe, then even when you're making a course that you would have made anyway, your thoughts are not your own. Your life's not your own. You don't control yourself, and therefore you have no self-ownership. And so what I wanted to do with you today is help you realize how we got here, how the concepts and the tactics really aren't new. It's the methods. In other words, there are shifts to tactics, but if we go back to, I don't know, World War II, let's not go all the way too far back yet, and we think of like weapons and tactics of warfare, we've certainly created and developed weapons and technology today that are far more advanced and therefore have certain different tactical implementations. But the overall tactics are the same. The shit going on in Iran right now, where day one of the war, like U.S. missiles, rockets, and bombs came in from everywhere all at once. That goes back to General Patton and his conflict with Rommel in North Africa. And it's been artillery doctrine in the United States since then. Neither good nor bad, not part of the propaganda. It just is. And I'm just trying to give you an analogy that all the things that they do to you today to control you, emotional responses, etc., go back way more than 150 years we're about to travel. Again, they go back to the time of the Roman Republic, right? The time of the Greeks, the time of the Chinese Empire, right? This is thousands and thousands of years. It's the same generalized tactics and techniques, but then we develop new tools with which to employ them. So if we think just the United States, and we think just 150 years back, because now we're kind of limiting it, we have to start with something that existed before that 150-year limit, because it was pretty much the only real mass media device available that was reliable to be effective of the time. And that was newspapers and mass print media. And these, I mean, Benjamin Franklin, Poor Richard's Almanac. There were newspaper, basically propaganda versus propaganda fighting between Jefferson and Adams. Okay, like that's how old it is. But the heyday of propaganda through mass media via newspapers and print media in the United States was really the 1830s to the 1890s, because you didn't have another opportunity. There wasn't anything else you could really use. And to understand this and why it's important that these people that want propaganda have sources to deliver the propaganda with, and it won't work without some technology like that. Think of the telephone game. Like, you sit at one end. Remember your kid? Most of you are too young to remember this. We used to do this when we were kids. You get a big circle, and like Billy's the first one, and he comes up with an idea, and he whispers something in Susie's ear, and then she whispers in Tammy's ear, and Tammy whispers in Billy or Bobby's ear, and it keeps going all the way around, and it comes back, and then the last person in the circle tells the original person what they think the message was. And the big joke was always purple monkey dishwasher. Like, no matter what you said, like, I really think Susie's cute, it came back, you know, Billy is interested in Tommy and he's gay, right? Like, and that might have been somebody messed it up along the way. But the only way you could justify the final result against anything else was to have the person who gave the original message available to say, no, that's not what I said. And so when you're trying to do propaganda, if you try to do it as a gossip game without some concrete anchor point, it takes on a life of its own, and therefore the propagandist loses control. So what would happen at this time is a rumor would begin to seem to circulate, and it would get all kinds of twisted and convoluted. And then I got to find out what the truth is. So where did this come from? Oh, it came from the local paper or whatever, and it was reported by our Washington correspondent, because we had those even back then. And then it would be like, oh, so this is the truth. Now, not everybody always believed it, but the majority did, and that's all that mattered. That's all you're trying to do with propaganda, move the majority. So that was the original proof point that you could look back to when there was confusion about who's good or who's bad, what we should be doing or shouldn't be doing, who really said what, right? And take the gossip mill down to something that looked like a fact was the print mass media and the newspapers. And again, that had its huge windup and led to the age of yellow journalism eventually, right? That went well into the early 1900s. But then the next thing that kind of overlapped and took that next leap forward came in about the 1840s and was really powerful all the way up into the early 1900s. And that was telegraph and early wire service. Now the people putting out the print publication could claim to know the thing that actually happened in London or New York or wherever, because it could be wired in. And whoever controlled what was wired in controlled what was sent out as print to all the people who didn't have access to the telegraph. At about the same time, just a few more years out, we started to get photography and visual media in print. This really picks up right about the time of the beginning of the American Civil War in 1860. And it has its full heyday until the early 1900s, because up until then, a still picture was the closest thing you could give somebody to see what happened over there. You got it? Where you could actually say, like, this is, before that, they literally had artists who were paid. And we even had this during the Civil War, because photography was just beginning to take off. There were people who were paid to go watch things happen and do artist renderings. Just like we still have today when they ban cameras from a courtroom, but the artist is allowed to go in and they do a picture of like Donald Trump yelling at people or whatever. Like, it's the same thing. But it was all they had was those drawings. In about 1860, cameras started to become more common and print media began to look a little bit better and began to evolve. And then that way you could take wired in information, an image of the actual site, and blend that into a story to convince people to believe whatever angle you wanted them to believe and follow your agenda. Okay. Then motion pictures. This is what, so none of these things killed the last thing, but they became the most cutting edge and the most effective. What was more effective than a picture of bodies on a battlefield during World War I was video of people going across the battlefield as poor quality as it was and getting blown up. If you would have been alive back then, it would have been as shocking to you as something like a virtual reality or like an IMAX theater version of it today, where, like, think about when the movie Saving Private Ryan came out. And it was one of the first movies, like with the D-Day landing, where you felt like you were one of the people following the people in front of you. And the visuals and the audio in that, when those bullets were impacting, and there were veterans in that, especially World War II veterans, who were in the premiere of that. They had to be helped from the audience. They had to leave. It stirred up so much deep inside of them that they had buried all those years that they couldn't handle it because it was that realistic. It's hard to look at something from like World War I right now and see that video and think like anything more than is this real or is this Charlie Chaplin, right? Because of the jerky motion. But at the time, this was something people had never seen. It was incredibly powerful, as powerful as a full-on cinematic movie today in conveying information. So that became the tip of the spear in the propaganda machine. Then we move into 1920s to 1940s, radio broadcasting and state messaging inside of it. So up until that point, there was kind of always like this certain level of guardrails, and you had to have the person you were trying to reach with the propaganda have enough interest to come find you. They had to go down to the store and give a nickel to the boy and buy a newspaper. They had to be interested enough to pay attention to what Bill was saying down at the feed store. You couldn't push market yet. But then when the radio became a thing and people would buy a radio and put it in their home and then they turned it on and they heard music and they heard news, they became addicted to it the way that most of Americans in the 70s, 80s, 90s were addicted to television. Right? Like it was like, and to be fair, like 60s, 50s, even with TV. We'll get to that in a second. But the radio became the primary means by which you gathered information. And now you had people willingly paying for their own device. Think about how similar this is to like the internet's advent in the 90s into the early 2000s. People were now paying for their own device, bringing it to their home, plugging it in to the wall, and paying for the power that allowed them to listen to you. And it was in a controlled environment. There was only so many frequencies on the dial. And as soon as this became a thing and government understood it, they put legislation and regulation around it. And, you know, Jack and Tom can't just start talking on the radio like that. You have to be within a frequency and a licensed area and all these other things. And you really ended up with the rise of the big media companies, the gatekeepers of all data. Even if there was 10 channels on your station, they weren't 10 independent channels. There was definite control and uniformity of messaging when the government wanted it that way. So now you had Bill or Tom or Harry willingly turning that on while they are in their wood shop working and listening to a baseball game or listening to the news. And you think, well, you know, one's an opportunity for propaganda, the other one's just a baseball game. Really? Really? Have you paid attention? Because burying the subliminal is actually one of the greatest tools for control. And the guy that's the announcer may not even know that. This just in. He reads whatever the hell they tell him to read. He just reads it in the announcer voice. He goes, now Harrison is back on second base. It's subtle and it's always been there. And so the radio took over. Then television and political advertising blew up in the 50s. We had TV before the 50s. But the 50s was when an average middle-class family became an owner of television by default. Now the radio took a back seat. The radio's for the car. The radio's for when you're out in the workshop or something like that or in the backyard where the TV's not really convenient. TVs were expensive enough at first. Most families had one, but they had one. And it was in the central family room, and everybody gathered around the glow. And now the government and now the propagandist machine and now the media machine and the corporations that were latching onto this and taking part in it too had one of the most controllable devices ever. It was new. It was innovative. You could actually see people, sometimes recorded, sometimes in real time, all over the world. You could tell stories. You could build in special effects. You had all this power, and you had advertising that went in between it like a sandwich. And then you had entertainment, infotainment, and news. And the news had a certain clout. Just the facts, ma'am. Only the facts. People bought it. So whatever they heard on the news, it was a damn big deal. And we had 3 stations. Eventually, we also had public broadcasting and a couple other things before cable came. And until cable came, we had that very limited spectrum back of channels. And so if you change the channel, you were still going to get very similar information. Now, into all this, and that ran from like the 50s to the 70s before it got blown up by cable, which we'll get to in a second, because another overlap in this was the 1950s up to the 1980s. That was the heyday and the launch, and now we still have them, of true public relations and mass persuasion industry. The rise of Madison Avenue as advertising, but also the rise of political juggernaut machines. The first elections that were heavily driven by television and radio advertising happened in this period of the 1950s through the early 80s. And it wasn't just because the political people were so smart. An entire industry was developed first to serve people marketing product. And then the political people said, wait a minute, our candidate is a product. And this is where we got uniformity of advertising. This is where we got formulaic advertising, leading to iconic commercials as we move now into the 1980s and 90s. That was the rise of cable television. We went from 4, 5, 6 channels to 100+ channels. MTV came on the scene, right? Eventually, country music television came on the scene, neither of which play music anymore, but still exist. We had the iconic television commercials. Where's the beef, right? Things like that. And we had all this messaging. And again, this was all developed and formulated by an industry that said, hey, I see an opportunity. We have all this new medium, specifically television, radio, and print advertising working in conjunction now, with print even including things like billboards and stuff like that, right? We can be the operator for the customer that actually, they don't really care about all the operations. They just want their message delivered to their audience. And so that was formed fully by the early 1990s. Then, you know what happened after the cable TV thing took off, and talk radio took off, by the way, too. It was the 90s. It was the 90s when your AM dial became full of incredibly powerful messaging from a political standpoint, from a talk show standpoint. And again, they had incredible amount of gatekeeping capacity. Even that expansion of the television networks to all these channels soon all got gobbled up into a conglomerate of about 6-7 companies control all information flow. And every time any independent really started to make anything happen, somebody walked up with a great big fucking checkbook and said, you don't want that anymore, do you? And they, yes, no, I don't. And that conglomeration continued and be at that point, if you go back to like 1992, the propagandist's greatest weapon was a combination of very specific formulaic control programs built by this industry of media and advertising consulting, plus the multi-channel cable networks, plus talk radio, plus the news services, always and print media. But the tip of the sword now became cable news and AM radio. Very, very gate kept in the beginning. Yeah. Okay. So then internet, email, and early online media. Now the customer, the person receiving the data, the propagandized, is now going to buy another expensive device to plug into their home willingly. A computer with a modem. And eventually high-speed internet comes along toward the end of the 90s and begins to build up. And they plug that machine in. And now the customer starts to take control, sort of. Push marketing kept growing in strength. In other words, I push the data I want you to see to you. I know you have a TV and you have so many channels to select from. I'll advertise on all of them. I know you're predisposed to listen to these 5 specific stations or channels. I'm going to advertise on those to reach the person like you. Again, a whole industry developed not only to design the messaging, but the demographic targeting. Now you got internet. And you have the Wild West at first. Anybody anywhere can publish a website. Some guy could spend a day reading a book and learn how to publish a website with Microsoft Front Page in a day and start putting up website after website after website. Super cheap. Didn't even have to look good. Didn't need flashy design. The fact that it was there made it have some credibility. If you look at some of the first big news websites, they were dog shit. What was the one with that broke on Clinton, the Clinton affair and all? I can't think of the name now. There was some guy had it, right? And it'll come to me when I stop trying to think about it. But it was one of the first big news aggregation sites. And I think it's still around. It still looks like crap, to be honest. I think they left it that way, kind of as a, hey, look what we can do type thing. But that's what you had. And then all of a sudden, all the actual big media companies, all the CNNs, right, were like, well, wait, this is, they all mocked it. They called it a fad. And when it took off, they're like, holy shit, we need to be there too. So they started to hire really great people to build these great websites. And then they figured out, the industrial complex that runs all this shit figured out we can track people. Oh, wait, we can demographic target like never before. Sure, anybody anywhere can put up anything, but we can become the guardians of what truth is. And we'll constantly remind people that anybody can put up anything. You should only go to trusted sources, which are the ones we tell you you can report that are trustworthy, that are trustworthy. And yes, it was Drudge Report. Thank you for that, Stymie. God, I couldn't remember that. Drudge Report is an example of what I'm talking about. So then the real media, supposedly, the legacy media comes along and grabs onto this and starts building out all their websites and things like that. Because in the beginning, they weren't there. They were pretty absent. And another piece of this wasn't the internet as we think of like going and browsing sites. It was email. Now something happened that you found important and you thought people in your network would find important. And instead of picking up the phone and calling one person, you just did a BCC if you're a good guy or a CC if you're a bad guy to all your contacts and said, hey, guess what I just found out? And those were the days of the stupid viral emails like, Bill Gates is tracking this email and everybody that forwards it's going to get their share of $1 billion or some stupid shit. Viral cartoons, viral videos going around by email before you were really seeking this out on the site, friends sharing with friends. Email is technically, in my view, while far more useful than most of what we have now for business purpose and direct communication purpose, the original social network. It was original social media. If you were young and in a job using internet in 1998, 1999, for instance, when a lot of people still didn't have it at home, you really know what I mean. Like the videos going around, the little flash video games, all of that stuff became incredibly viral like overnight. There were people sending emails like this just to see if it would ever end up coming back to them and putting little tags in them where they could figure out, yeah, that was for me. And actually trying to figure out how far it went and how much it circulated around. And so we went from that then to then we like, okay, wait. Now, kind of congruent with this, the 90s into the early 2000s, we have all these websites. We have all this stuff. How do we find it? How do we sort through it? And this was the blow up of search engines. And then search engine marketing, which is what my world was in at the time. And that led us to the age of the blogs. Now, we still have blogs today. I think the number one software that websites are built on, whether they actually look like a blog or not, is WordPress, which is a blogging software designed for blogging. But blogs became a thing where they were powerful in their messaging. Today, a blog is just another website. But when they first started blowing up, the fact that somebody that knew a thing was talking about the thing that they knew about, and you could learn about it, whether it was technical or whether it was the news or whether it was commentary, really started to take hold. And then famous people started blogging. Famous people like your current president, whether you like him or not, Donald Trump, had a blog. Famous people like Mark Cuban had a blog called Blog Maverick. And people became famous, and then got a blog. People got a blog, and the blog made them famous. Blogs made them wealthy. Using blog-type websites today without some form of high-level media like a podcast, like video, etc., is not really effective like it was back then. But it was hugely effective back then. So what did the government do? They built their own blogs. They astroturfed everything. And the blog was the time of the first true rise of the paid influencer. And the blogger may not even know that they were a mechanism of propaganda. They would be approached by a company that was a media company, a new media company, a Web 2.0 media company. Remember that shit? And they would be like, we have a paid campaign for you. We will give you $10,000 if you run these 3-4 articles. And those might have even seemed like they were to sell widgets or something, but buried in them was plenty of propaganda. Or they were just making sure that all the news stories had a certain amount of uniformity across them. So you saw it in the blog, you saw it in an email, you saw it on TV, and you heard the AM radio guy talk about it on the way home from work. Well, now it must be true. Now we're heading towards something that marketers are very familiar with. It's called the 7-touch rule. And that rule is pretty simple. If I can touch you with a message at least 7 times, you'll probably remember it forever. Even if you can't sit down and think right now, what was that message? If you hear something about it, you'll be like, oh yeah, that. And so I have all these mediums, And if I can touch you 7 times, 2 with this one with that one with the other one, 2 with this one, 2 with that one, okay, I got you. I've at least put my message in your head. I don't have to necessarily get the reaction I'm looking for now. I just have to prime that pump with that message. And the longer I do it, the more effective it becomes. And the more I piece them together, right? Like building a blockchain. Like that original thing that I dropped on you in 2005 still affecting you in 2026 when I drop the next layer on that chain. And this is how the whole thing got built. Then what takes off is social media and user-generated content in more of a short form. The dawn of Twitter, the dawn of Facebook, right? We're not really into the heavy, like TikTok type content yet. We're just into that stage where mom and daughter are both on social media platforms. Maybe not even the same ones. Maybe the daughter like has the regular name one and a fake name one. So mom follows the one, she puts all the good stuff. But all of a sudden, the whole family is communicating with each other and arguing with each other on sites like Facebook and MySpace, right? Whatever happened to that. And little short form blog sites like Tumblr. Like a lot of these made it, a lot of them didn't. Or some transformed from Twitter to X. Basically, it's the same thing. And that had its heyday from about the mid-2000s until the early 2010s. Well, what comes up next is smartphones and always-on connectivity. That really begins with an overlap again. All these technologies build off of each other from the late 2010s, right? Or late 2000s to the early mid-2010s, right? We had this kind of like always-on content and algorithm-driven feeds and targeted ads. We have plenty of targeted advertising before this, but when people gave these companies 4 or 5 years of history they recorded of you, then, Twitter, X, Facebook, etc., knew exactly what to put in front of you. They knew exactly what to put in front of you, not only from an advertiser perspective, but to create engagement. They knew exactly what your rage bait was. And then the government just piggybacks on this. We'll push out messaging, and you understand something about the government. Our government is not a government like, let's say, the Chinese government, where the Chinese government's goal is I want everybody thinking the same. And then the U.S. government is I want people in 2 tribes, and I want everybody in those tribes thinking the same. It's the Chinese philosophy of propaganda is unify through force and fear. And the United States propaganda machine's overriding strategy is divide and conquer. They don't care which side you pick a side with, as long as you don't think independently for yourself and come up with another option other than the A or the B that they give you. That's disruptive to them. They don't appreciate that at all. So we have the rise of the smartphone, late 2000s to the 2010s. We have that always-on connectivity, the algorithm-driven feeds and targeted ads through the 2010s forward. And then we have mid-2010s up into the 2020s is still going on, the rise of the influencer. And not like we had influencers before then, podcasters and things like that. The influencer who actually has a lot of power and a lot of control, but all their content is 30 seconds to a minute and a half long. It's just a phenomenal thing in every niche possible. And it seemed like, well, now the plot is really lost for the propagandist. All I care about is steak, so I'm going to follow Meat Dad. But once they have you on the platform and they control the platform and they influence the platform and they influence the influencer, then even if you only want to take this particular content in, the associated content does its own thing. And they develop a very specific profile of you. Now we have things being turned into computer algorithms and databases and database match sets. And all of a sudden, they're customizing the message to Bill. They're customizing the message to Hey, Alabama, right? I'm reading people in the thing here, right? To Mick, to Stymie. They're customizing the message to Dennis. They're specifically to Walt, to all of you, your own customized message. This could have never been done before all that technology was developed. But now they had an unlimited selection of user-provided content from big companies to little people with a smartphone, to people taking pictures of their feet while they drink a beer on the beach, to people videoing themselves fishing, to people doing actual journalism that the real journalists supposedly won't do, and embedding themselves in situations. And now they could have an unlimited amount of combinations to stick in front of you. And then we all know what comes next. AI-driven curation, content, synthetic media. That would be the late 2010s, like 2018, 2019 to present. Now you don't even know if something's real anymore. Like in the beginning, it was really easy to tell AI. Now it's only easy to tell AI when it comes to like video content and all, if the person using it is really stupid and goes too far with it. And the machines themselves continue to go too far with it, but they're getting better and better and more refined. So now we're not even sure what we're looking at. Are we actually looking at Donald Trump announcing another war, or are we looking at AI? Did Iran actually build a stealth bomber that looks even more like a stealth bomber than the B-2, flying out of the side of a cliff, or was it AI? That one was AI, just as an example. And there's so much of that. But the AI component of generating content is only one piece of it, because the AI content right now, except by people that are really good operators of the system, and there's not many of them, not many know what to use it for and what not to use it for, just as a starting point. But where it really has a lot of power is what AI can do behind the scenes. AI is now figuring out the algorithm and making the choice of what to serve and checking for people that need to be censored because they're dangerous and spreading misinformation. And the government has access to every bit of this and more. And they hire and train the best psychological warfare people in the world to build their propaganda. And that's what you're up against. And that might seem long, but it's 150 years of the same macro tactic being refined through new weaponry. And this is why when you look around and you go, how did we get here? This is how we got here. This is by design. People did not become dumber. They become less educated while believing they are more educated. Right? That's what happened. When you use propaganda the right way, you can literally convince somebody that they're smarter than everybody that disagrees with them because you gave them a piece of paper that says so. And then once that natural perception bias takes over and plugs itself into this machine, they become insufferable. And the next thing you know, you have somebody looking at you with a straight face telling you a man can have a baby. That's how you got there. I feel like Putin, when Tucker asked him, like, what caused the current war, and he went back to, like, the 1600s and shit, or the year 1100 or whatever, right? But honestly, it's the only way to explain this is to really understand how long this cycle's been playing out and how every new technology at first empowers and frees you and then becomes the means by which you are controlled. And the more comfortable you become with it, the better it is for them that they take it over a little later in the game. Because now you trust it, and now they're co-opting what you trust. So let's talk about how you use all these tools and remain mentally sovereign, since not using them is a huge disadvantage. Like if you're in a business today and you're not using AI, I don't know what to tell you. And if you don't have a website, I don't know what to tell you. If you don't have a social media presence, I don't know what to tell you. If you're a student and you're not using these tools for research, I don't know what to tell you. These things have gone from luxury to necessity to compete in the modern world, whether you like it or not. And I know if you're 88 years old, you cannot give a fuck about not just this, but not anything. But if you're still building your career, you're still building your life, you're still building a business, then you need some of this technology anyway, and you need ways to use it. So, number one, the first thing you should do when anything pops up on your radar and you start to feel an emotional or some sort of impulse for a response to it is to pull back and say, wait a second. Do I care about this? Does this matter? Will this matter in 2 weeks? And it's easy at that point in the peak of emotion to say that it will. But so much of it won't. It won't just not matter. You'll never think about it again. 2 weeks from now, you'll forget it ever happened and you'll never know. And I've seen the public flow, ebb and flow of this so many times doing this podcast with things that people wanted me to cover. I'm like, that's not worth covering. When everybody's freaking out about Ebola. I'm like, it's bullshit. I know how Ebola works. It's not going anywhere. Don't worry about it. If we're not going to be shitting in the streets and drinking the water out of the river that the shit runs into, we're going to be okay with Ebola. Oh, no, everybody, you don't know. And like 3 weeks into it, all the coverage went away and it went away. That's just one example. Like the scamdemic they pulled, that was a master propaganda. Someday soon, we need to go through and examine the propaganda behind the scamdemic. I'm not ready to do that today. I don't have that would be a standalone show in of itself, but that was a master case for it. But I remember, I think it was about 2012. It was a super bad flu season. Everybody better get the shot. Hospitals are overrun. Yeah, I remember that. Now, that would have been 2010. That would have been 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. I still was working with Neil, so that's 2009 at the latest, late 2009. I remember going into a coffee shop, and that morning I'd gone out to the garden, and the snow peas there's a bunch of them. So I picked a handful of them, and I had them in a cup in my console, and I was eating them like snacks on the way to work. And I threw one in my mouth right before I went in to get a coffee. And it happened to be one that had like fibers and strings in it. It got in the back of my throat, and I coughed a little bit. And the guy on the radio had just been talking about this dangerous flu season. Everybody, their faces went white. They looked at me like they were all going to die. It's not the COVID. This is 2010 or 2009. And then I had emails coming in. Jack, you don't know. I work at a hospital, and the people that we're seeing coming into the hospital are really, really sick. You think? You think? See, the thing is, I only go to the hospital if I'm really, really sick. With flu, it's not like everyone with the flu just runs to the hospital. So you need to real quick ascertain if something is going to just be gone off your radar in 3 weeks. And if it is, there's no reason to waste a second of mental sovereignty, mental energy, or your life force in it. Write it off. I remember when I talked about this particular subject back then, and I gave people a challenge, and a couple of people poked at it, but nobody did it the way I said. What I said is go get a notebook, like one of them little black and white notebooks, the composition books, and get a big metal chip clip. And I want you every day to write down, and people wrote down all kinds of stuff, except the one thing I said to write. The thing that's in the news that you think is the most important that day, that you truly believe in your heart of hearts will matter to you next week and beyond. And to write that down and how you felt, it's just what it is and how you felt about it and why you thought it was important. And then to take that page and put it up against the front cover of the book, put the clip over it, put the little clip sides down on it, and close the book so you can't see what's on that page. And the next day, do it again. And the next day, do it again. And the next day, do it again. And make sure every time you do a new page, you do front side only, so you can't see what's on the back. You clip the pages that have already been written onto the front cover of the book, and you're not allowed to look at them for 6 weeks. And after 6 full weeks, take the clip off and start reading. And realize how many of those things you'd forgotten about and didn't give a square root of fuck all about. I'd still like to see somebody do that. At least one person I'd like to see take that seriously. Don't put in like how you feel about your mama from when you were 5 years old and shit like that. Don't make this a self-help journal. Just these are the stories in the media today that I think are important and matter, and it's important for me to have an opinion on. By the time you do that, you're going to go into week 4 before you even fucking remember writing it down, most likely. It's a wake-up call. It'll make you stop wasting burning mental energy. It'll make you far less susceptible to propaganda, because the propaganda always comes in those bursts like that. Because explain it with kind of a little bit of darkness, right? If I want to torture you and I strap you down to a table, I take something simple like this toothpick I'm holding. I can cause you a tremendous amount of pain with this toothpick. You wouldn't believe the amount of pain I can cause you with this toothpick. But if I keep doing the same thing long enough, your body will go into some level of shock and disensitivity, and it will stop being effective. But if I torture you with the toothpick here, and I keep moving it around and changing the way I'm doing it, it's dramatically effective long term. That's propaganda. I have to hit you left, right, center, left, right, center, center, right, left, center, like a boxer. Jab, jab, punch. And I have to keep you off balance. And I have to keep you always afraid and always realize something new's coming. Something new's coming. I'll miss it. Well, once you do the journal project, you realize you didn't miss anything except wasting your time. The next thing would be if it passes that filter. This is going to matter. I believe this is going to matter. The next thing you should do is seek the best counter argument you can find, and make sure you're seeking a counter argument that is in opposition to your personal bias. If it's an A-B choice and everything in your gut tells you A, go find all the supporting evidence for B you can, because that's probably going to lead you to the truth, which is like C squared, which is some pieces of both, and then your own deductive reasoning going forward, or recycling it back to, actually, turns out I don't give a fuck about this. It's not going to affect my life, so now it goes in the discard pile. Don't ever pick a card up out of the discard pile. Once you discard it, let it go. It'll be fine. If it's really important, it'll come back around as something new. Now, remember always a tool can be used. If it can be used, it will be used. And that means that this will never stop. And any tool that comes out in the future will also be used by the propagandists. And from the most ancient thing we talked about today, which is basically print media, all the way up to advanced AI algorithmic driven content and curated content, they're using all of it. So anything that can be a means of the distribution of information will be a tool of propaganda. Meaning you can trust nothing on the surface until the source is verified as trustworthy over time. And even then, you need to occasionally kick the tires around it and make sure it's still valid and it still applies to what you're doing now in life. Okay. Next, if you could not act, and I'm creating a term here because not always would this apply directly. It's an analogy. As a, quote, attorney for the opposition, end quote, then you do not have an opinion that is your own. You don't. If you couldn't step into a legal argument, take the side of the side you are in opposition to, and do your best to represent them under the circumstances as an attorney, you don't have your own opinion. You have an opinion that was delivered to you by someone else. It might even be accurate, but you don't know that. We talked about this yesterday. If I control how you think, then you don't have any sovereignty at all. You're my slave. Even if you think the same thing, if I control it, I still control you. Because, and actually, the more I give you that is actually true, the easier it is for me to deceive you with the thing that I just want to activate you with that isn't true. Or the angle I'm presenting it to you is disingenuous. That's often even more the case. The most effective propaganda is technically at its root true, but as delivered leads to an outcome that is not consistent with the truth underlying it, if that makes sense. And this is a science, and it is a very ancient science. Again, you can find instances of it in the writings in ancient China, ancient Rome, and ancient Greece. And I bet you if we looked hard enough, we could. I know we can. If you read 1491 America before Columbus, right here in the New World, in the ancient cultures of like the Yucatan and central Mexico, the Inca, the Toltec, the Maya, the Aztec, they had plenty of propaganda machine. And again, they were using written dissemination of information and edicts from the king that were then passed on by scribes and folded into stories and myths. And many myths presented as fact. It's no different. But you should be able to explain the other side. If you can't, you don't know. Now, I know you're going to say, Jack, what about this shit earlier of a man can have a baby? Okay. That is an example of when something becomes completely, infinitely absurd. There is a point where you go, no, I'm not playing that one. But what I caution you to, this is very hard to believe, there may be some sort of absurdium, infinite absurdium on your side too. There may be something the other side looks at you and thinks you are just as dumb as you think they are, and they may be right or they may be wrong. It's important to know if that's the case, though, and at least examine it again so you know why you believe what you believe. That's the most important thing in all of this. You also need to limit total consumption. You have to filter all of the data that comes into your brain. You have to be the master programmer of the most advanced computer known to man, which is your 3 pounds of fat in your bone skull. You have to be that master programmer. You have to be running constant filtering algorithms. You have to be constantly writing your own proactive code. If you don't, by default, you will write negative code, you will write shitty code, and you will let others write code in your brain. You have to do that. Now, if I were to say, look, you're going to have to fight 3-4-year-old kids at one time, and like these kids are going to try to kill you, you have to fight back. Most grown-ass men, even women, would just be like, man, I hate to do it, but if Tammy's got to go through a wall, Tammy's got to go through a wall. And so those 3-4 little kids can come at you, just smack, 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 and smack, and it's done. And you have no problem defending yourself. That's the propaganda machine when you learn to recognize a pattern. Okay, when you get that good pattern recognition down. Okay. But now I want you to think about it this way. You have to fight those 3 little kids. But every time you knock the third one to the ground, a door opens and 3 more come out. How long before they wear you out? An hour, 2 hours, half a day, a day? You got to sleep sometime. The sheer overwhelming wave upon wave upon wave upon wave will wear you down at some point. You have to eat. You have to stop. It's not a perfect analogy, but it almost is, because people are taking a dump, doom scrolling. People are watching a TV show with their partner. Their partner has to go to the bathroom. They hit pause and come back, and the partner's doom scrolling. And then they're like, hey, why you can't make it? But you took your phone to the bathroom. You go to a concert or a baseball game, anything, and things pause for a moment. Everybody's doom scrolling. Everybody's consuming. Everybody's just one text message. I got to make this one comment. You go to an airport and you walk through, and in the background playing in your head is CNN or Fox News. Every TV is on. The volume's low. Closed captions are on. But it's there, and you're hearing it whether you realize it or not. How long? How much data can come in before you, as the lead programmer, simply wear out? It's like being a counter hacker for a network, but the hackers never stop. Even if you can crush them all like bugs, there's 1,000 of them, and they never stop. Eventually, you wear out. This is what happens if you don't just have a hard break. I'm not listening to any of this. I'm not reading any of this. I'm not taking any of this. And that's why I think you have to have hard limits. And the hard limit isn't I get this much time, because that gets abused. The hard limit is I don't before and I don't after these concrete times. My thing is, we can watch TV or something like that after dinner, but the phone goes away. I'm not on social media. And a super hard limit is 2 hours before bed. No news, no social media. If I got my phone out, I'm reading a Kindle book on some sci-fi novel or some shit. Right? Something totally divorced from this other thing. Engaging the mind, yes. Or I'm writing my own thing, working on my own thing. Same thing in the morning. When I get up, I do not look at what's happened in the world. I do my roughly 2-hour morning routine. which is about an hour of self-work and then about an hour of work. Then I look at what's going on. My mind is completely pristine to what happened while I was asleep. In fact, what happened from at least 2 hours before I went to bed until at least 2 hours after and that didn't have to be yours. But it'd be some no more, zero. You probably do it with your kids. Like you shouldn't, right? I think kids of a certain age shouldn't even be doing all this shit, but at some point you got to let them. But you have to be like, okay, not during dinner, not at lunch, right? No, you're not going to be on the internet and watching TV and taking up both devices at the same time and pouring all that shit from both directions in your brain. Do it for yourself. Or in the words of many influencers, right? This gets overused, but it's valid. Touch grass. Go do something that has nothing to do with this. Have times that are set to take a walk, not even listening to me. Classical music, sure. Something like that, sure. Go work out. Go do something. And stop taking in information, especially information subject to propaganda, which is most information. Not all, but most. Like, there is other information in the world. You're probably not going to get a lot of propaganda listening to Gabe Brown talk about how to cultivate a field organically. You're probably not going to get a lot of propaganda listening to somebody play music from the 70s and 80s on piano. Right, or somebody playing electric harp, or listening to Beethoven or Tchaikovsky, Beethoven or Mozart or something like that, right? So you have to pick and choose, but you also have to have some hard limits of, I'm going to be very mindful of this time. Otherwise, you don't get a reboot, and eventually you wear out on filtering the bad programming, which is exactly what the goal is. The goal is to constantly bombard you so you just say, fuck it, I got to accept something. Next, assume emotional manipulation first and information second. And what I mean by that is, when you look at a piece of content, assume right out of the gate that it's first designed to get an emotional response to you, and then second to provide you with information, even if that information is valid. Because I can take the same information and formulate two different messages that get very different emotional responses. Just the headline and the rest of the article can be the same, and I can change your entire perception. Here's an example of something I used to do with marketing training back in the day. The movie Office Space was a great movie, a cult classic. If you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like a situation comedy, I guess, movie based on some technical accuracy and some technical bullshit, but it's based on life in a cubicle in the 90s and a heist they try to commit that goes the wrong way. But the overriding thing is some consultants, right? They come take over the company, and basically everybody has to interview to keep their job, and they do downsizing and all of that kind of mess. And it's soulless, life-crushing work and all of that stuff. But what a lot of people did was they took all of the scenes from the trailers, and I don't know why this movie in particular seemed to attract a lot of creativity to do this, and they would remix the trailer. They use the same, 2 minutes of footage, broken up and rearranged, music and different mood set, and a different initial prompt as to what you were looking at. Somebody did it where it was a crime investigation movie, and the two consultants were made to look like cops conducting a detective's interview. Somebody did it as a slasher thriller. Somebody did it as a rom-com because Jennifer Aniston was in it. And there was like 4 or 5 really well done remixes. And I used to take this in my marketing talks and show a couple of them and suggest that people go look at the rest of them. But then I'd say, everybody here, put up your hand if you've seen the movie. And, more than half of the hands would go up in a talk. I'd be like, okay, who here would agree that if you look at the crime investigation one, it basically is the movie? And almost the same amount of hands would go up. And if I go, but if the one that was like a psychological drama, who here thinks that actually really kind of was what the movie was? Same hands go up. Now, what I said next was, though, if you had seen either of these trailers when you went to the movie, who would have been like, I've been bamboozled? But all the hands went up again. It's like that. You have to understand that if we can create an emotional manipulation and you don't know the alternative, we can use the same information to get dramatically different results from different groups of people. And with demographic targeting, right, which is way beyond how old you are at this point, it's basically this algorithm has built in a profile of you that is exactly what you like and don't like. Then I can take the same information I give Bill and I can give Dennis a totally different result from that same information. You guys all saw the same thing. You came to different opinions because I already knew what I was doing to manipulate you. And so I want you to start thinking this way. If I read something and I immediately get angry or happy or sad or depressed, pull back instantly. Pull back instantly and cut it off. And I know if it's about like some pedo abusing some kid, that is genuine rage. But why are they putting it in front of you now, even if it's true? That's the question to find a logical answer to, separate of the emotion. That's the only way to take away from it that which will actually benefit you in your life. And if it doesn't benefit you, what are you doing with it? Why are you spending time and energy on something that doesn't benefit you? Now, the other thing is when you see synchronistic pattern, manipulation is highly likely at play. And what I mean is that when everything syncs up to tell you the same story, that's when you think this must be true. Well, MS Now and Fox News are mortal enemies. They would kill each other if they could. They're singing from the same sheet of music. This must really be true. Think about that. Does that actually make sense to you in your brain that's been programmed with all this bullshit? When you have all of the wrestlers, they're supposed to be the good wrestlers and the bad wrestlers all coming together in Kumbaya, don't you realize the whole thing's a facade? Isn't that the point where even as a little kid, you realized this isn't real? This isn't real. I remember who the comedian was. There was some comedian had a bit back in the 90s, and they said something like, I remember somebody said something to him about going like to Texas or Alabama or Florida or something like, they have rednecks there. They think wrestling's real and the space program's fake. A little bit to it, right? But yeah, when you see that synchronistic pattern emerge, or even if the message isn't the same, if some version thereof is everywhere, you're being manipulated. Like MSNBC or CNN or Fox News or Newsmax or alternative media A, B, C, or D, right? Or talk show hosts C, D, and E, right? They all may be talking about it differently, but when they're all talking about the same thing at the same time, rest assured there's an invisible hand behind the scenes. Doesn't really care what your take is on it. They just want you paying attention to it. They're the magician. They don't care if you're looking at the pretty woman in the pretty dress because you're a woman who's envious of her, or you're a guy that's like, oh, man, she's really good looking. They don't care why you look at her. They just want you to look at her so that they can pull whatever bullshit they're pulling and make a motorcycle appear out of their butthole or whatever. Again, they don't care why. They just care that. And when that synchronization pattern emerges and everybody's on the same page, even with different takes about that page, you're being manipulated. That should be instantly like rant, 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 warning, Will Robinson, right? Like, you know, there's some bullshit there. Oh, by the way, go look at those old sci-fi movie or TV shows from the 50s and 60s. They're all anti-Russian propaganda for World War III bullshit. That's what they are. You watch them with that in mind. Go look at how many episodes of the Twilight Zone from Rod Serling, which is some great storytelling. I'm not putting it down, but they're overtly about World War III. I think like 1 in 5 of those was World War III related directly, and a bunch of other undertones in it. There's evil in the world, and they're out to get you. Yeah. Then another thing you always have to be asking yourself, especially when you feel emotional in response to something, who benefits if people believe this? Who benefits if this thing happened versus who are we told caused the thing to happen? Here's an example from fairly recent times. Remember when they told you that Russia blew up its own pipeline? Yeah. Did I instantly say that's stupid and anybody that believes it's an idiot? I did. Do you know why? A pipeline is basically a tube. Why would Russia blow up its own pipeline to Germany? Did they spend all that time and money and effort in building? If they didn't want, well, they didn't want Germany to be able to get natural gas so that they could have leverage and they would hurt Ukraine somehow. I don't know how, but somehow. Wait a minute. Who benefited by that pipe being blown up? Germany didn't benefit. Russia didn't benefit. Ukraine and the United States benefited. And our other lapdog, whether depending on what direction, who's a lapdog, the UK. Those three entities benefited the most. So that should have been your suspect list, right? Because you think about this, Putin's crazy and he's a madman. Okay, sure, fine. But is he so stupid? I mean, the guy's held power for like 30 years in a very difficult country to hold power in that long. If that's the case, we can just write off the guy being just plain stupid. No matter how evil, he's not stupid. Why would I blow up an expensive tube so that stuff doesn't go through it when all I have to do is not put the stuff through it? Actually, I would have more leverage then. Germany, would you like some gas? Yes, well, I'd like you to do these things or I'm turning it off. Blowing it up, you should have immediately just been able to say, everybody's singing the same sheet of music. Everybody's saying this is extremely important, and everybody's pointing at Russia. Okay, who benefits? The second you asked who benefited in that one situation, the entire thing dissolved. Right? The entire thing just dissolved away into the ethereum of bullshit. There's no freaking way. And you still have people are, yeah, Putin did it. You freaking dumbass. Get away from me. You're going to spread stupid virus onto me. I can't. You're too dumb to be near me. My IQ's going down listening to you breathe. Please stop, hold your breath and see where it goes. Trust me, this will be a good experiment for you. You have to understand that when the majority accepts the narrative as fact, the real thing behind it is based on who benefits from it, because the entire thing is agenda driven. One thing you have to understand about all of this shit, I don't care whether the propaganda is designed to get you to buy a kombucha. I don't care if the propaganda is designed to get you to purchase a gun. I don't care if the propaganda is designed to buy a certain toothpaste. I don't care if the propaganda is designed to make you take a certain drug or form an opinion about a foreign adversary. The goal of the person pushing the message out is not to serve you. It's to serve their own agenda. By developing the reaction from you that they seek, it is a scientific marketing formula. And these people are very good at it. And they know precisely what they're doing. It's like dealing with a Kung Fu master who knows the exact pressure point that when he pushes it, it doesn't just make you turn to your side, it makes you pee your pants. That's how good they are at it, as long as you're not aware of it. The very fact that you're aware of it, being not from one group, it's not Rachel Maddow. Like, Rachel Maddow is not the source of propaganda. Even the network that hires that retard is not the source of propaganda. The people that own the collective of networks, they control all the dissemination of information. They're the source of the propaganda. And that means the agenda always serves what they want, never serves what you want. It can't serve what you want. Why would they spend money to give you what you want? They spend money to get what they want from you. Is that a basic, easy to understand concept? You also need to avoid identity attachment. When your identity is tied to a position, any position, no matter how stupid, you lose control and you lose perspective. Here's an example. There used to be a TV show. I actually really liked this show. It was called Brain Games. They probably got rid of it because it was telling too much truth. And they would do different things. There's always like optical illusions and stuff like that to teach you how the mind works. Like, you think that this thing ends here, but it's really a circle or whatever. But they also did some other really kind of cool experiments. And one of the ones they did is they said, we're going to have a game. and let's say it was football, right? And it's made up of red players and blue players. A little cartoon of the football game going on. And they said, this is how you know your team. If you were born between January and June, then your team is red. And if you were born between, July and December, then your team is blue. And I'm sitting there watching this with my wife. And a couple seconds into it, I realized we're actually both rooting for our team. And then I realized how stupid this is. And I'm like, I don't care. She goes, that's because your team's losing. I'm like, honey, think. And she's like, oh. And of course, this goes on for about a couple of minutes, and then one team wins, and they're like, were you disappointed? And the guy comes on and explains the whole thing and says, basically, you have no attachment to this, but the minute I told you, you did. And instead of saying, like going directly to the person saying you are red, they made you work out what you were by making you do a very simple logic problem. Was I born in an even year or odd year? What did he say? Now you've chosen your side. Okay, if that stupid shit can lead people to root for basically a video game that they have no outcome from, that they can't even play, they're just watching somebody else play it, and it's not even a video game, it's like a preset role-playing video game, like the example the computer shows to get you to play the game, then what about when you identify as a Republican or a Democrat or a liberal or a conservative or a man or a woman or a traditionalist or a progressive or whatever? Doesn't really matter. And I'm not saying we shouldn't identify as things. We are going to identify as things. This is a human constant, right? And it's okay that we identify as things. But when we know we identify with something and that identity is attached to a message, it's not that we can't even go back to that at some point. It's when I talk about sometimes your emotions and all. For this episode, I'll say something like, take it out of take your feelings about this, put it on the shelf like your wallet. It's not that you don't care. I care about my wallet, keep my money and my ID and everything in there. Credit cards, it's important, but I don't have to have my wallet on me at all times. Put it on the shelf and I know it's safe. And when I go back out, I put my wallet in my pocket. Yeah. Okay. So when you find yourself not just attached emotionally, but literally in some level identifying with the people doing this thing are on the other team. They're on the other side. They're the Russians. They're the Israelis, right? They're the warmongers. They're the statists, and I am the other thing. You will never take a clear, focused view at what you're looking at. I would submit to you, for those that saw the show yesterday where we analyzed the Iran war, that I gave the most even-handed assessment of the conflict and its possible outcomes possible. I don't believe, if you didn't already have some predisposition that I'm a very anti-war person, that in watching that, you could have, if you had never seen anything or heard anything from me before, and I didn't tell you that, I don't think you could have said what my position was. I don't think you could have said what my emotional, moral position was. You would have been like, well, he just explained all the things that could happen and their likelihood. He didn't. Now, most people wouldn't have seen it that way. If they were honest with themselves and they were open-minded to it, they would have realized it. But most people got angry. I had lots of anger yesterday, right? People accusing me of building a straw man. I didn't even know what part of it they were talking about. But that's because they identified with a group within the discussion. And therefore, anything that even sounds like it's counter to that identity must be fought and resisted. Here's another story from my past with training. Training salespeople. I used to do this with salespeople and talk about not pushing on people, right? And what I would say is I want everybody to, like Simon says, you only do what I tell you to. Yeah? Everybody stand up. Everybody find somebody to face and everybody look at each other. Okay. Everybody that's on the left, I want you to put your hand up. Do it. Put your hand up like you're swearing on the Bible. Okay, put your hand up. I want everybody on the right to also put your hand up, and I want you to push against the person who has their hand up in front of you. And they would push, and I would watch. And about 1 in 10, when they push, you'd see their hand just go like back. And the other 9 of 10, you would see resistance. I'd say, okay, everybody stop. Okay, everybody that was pushing, who felt resistance, raise your hand, because it's starting to click in what happened. So the people that did resist are going to pretend they didn't. So you ask the guy that did what he was told. The sign that says winners, right? And almost every hand would went up. I felt resistance. And I'll say, did I tell any of you to resist? Did I tell any of you? And they're like, well, no. Why did you do it? And it's because when people are pushed against, they resist. And I used to, in that training, what I was training people to do is to stop pushing to the customer and to start pulling from the customer what their needs are, to the point where they realize you're actually trying to develop something that fits their needs. And then they would give you the information you needed to design a system for them, and therefore your permission to present it to them, so you weren't pushing. That same psychological dynamic plays out here. And the reason I can recognize it is because pattern recognition. When you've seen something before and you don't typecast it to that one place, then you can see how it fits in other systems as well. That's incredibly important for you to identify. Then filter between informed and activated. Information expands your options, okay? Activation narrows them. So after you've taken in the information that is provided to you, if you feel you have very small amounts of choice, A or B, or only A, or only B is all that's left, then you've been activated. You haven't been informed. When you are informed, you should always feel that I have now more optionality, not less. So that's an instant signal that you're being propagandized. When you feel the walls closing in, this is back to the resistance thing. And my explanation for this one in sales training was always, if I'm driving down the road and I see a stray dog, he's kind of like lost in the middle of the median. He's been gone a while. He's scared. He's not had people in his life. And I jump out of my car, snatch him up, and throw him in the back of the car. Managed not to get bit doing that. And I take him home and I lock him in a small room. And I get a bowl of food. And I go in and he backs into the corner like, leave me alone, man. I don't know what this is about. And I shove it in his face. And I try to make him eat. He's probably going to take my hand or my face off, isn't he? I made it hard for him to say no. So he's naturally resistant. Okay. I've narrowed his options. That should be your response, to fight back. But most people, okay, well, then I'm going to go through this stuff, path of least resistance. How do I get through that dog? I pull over to the side of the road. I take a bowl of food because he's hungry. I set it on the ground and I back up. And I, maybe I back far enough away that I'm not worried about him charging me or some shit. And I sit down and I just sit there. And I don't even look at him. I kind of just look past him. He comes up. He sniffs the food. He eats it. He's really hungry, so he finishes the bowl. He's kind of sniffing around, and I put some food in my hand. I just lay it on the ground. Now what happens? Eventually, he gets enough trust. He takes the food out of my hand, maybe grabs it, runs away, and eats it, and comes back. And eventually, after a couple of times, maybe I reach up and I just gently pet him. And I'm going to take that dog that was terrified of me, and I'm going to turn him into my best friend because I haven't narrowed his choices. The dog is smarter than the average person. The dog knows the person that narrows their choices is seeking to dominate them, and the person that expands their choices is seeking to aid them. So that's your best judge of information. That's why I try to do the shows like I do, taking complex things apart. Yesterday, you should have left that episode, if you watched it, with complete autonomy and freedom to decide whatever you wanted about the Iran conflict. Not what I decided. Not what I told you to think. I just gave you possibilities and probabilities. That made people angry. Because when people become accustomed to being dominated, they seek to be dominated, and they think everything is domination. So anything outside of their wheelhouse is being dominated in the direction they do not want to go. And they actually take the expansion of choice as a restriction of choice. And say, well, if I buy into anything he says, I have to buy into everything he says, even though he said I didn't have to. I don't believe him because I don't believe people work that way, because I don't experience people working that way, and because I don't work that way because I'm a product of the system that he's railing against. Wait a minute, maybe he's on my side. I hope that's where people eventually gets, right? That's where, I hope that's where people eventually get to. And the last thing, I think this is the most important, and it kind of bookends with do I even care how we let off, is that silence is almost always an option. You don't have to have a take on everything. And I think when you tell people that, they tend to have this belief system, right? This belief system that what you're saying is you can shut up sometimes. And I don't mean that, because most people have like 5 people that follow them on, whatever social media platform they're on, and don't pay attention anyway. So if anything, they cathartically vent their take on issue A. Nobody reads it and nobody cares. And nobody would have missed it if it wasn't there. Or everybody agrees with it and nobody cares. And they wouldn't have missed it if it wasn't there. So when I say a take, I don't mean you don't always have to go out and talk about or communicate about everything, though that is a piece of it. What I mean is it's not all got to be something that you pick up and discern from. There's things all the time that happen to you filter out. If you're not a sports fan and somebody happens to post something, or some media comes up or something about, a really great baseball game, you just filter it out. You're like, I don't care. That doesn't matter. But somehow when it's on the news, and somehow when it's even adjacent to something you sort of care about, you think you have to. And if I let go of it, well, God, something will miss, or bad will happen, or whatever. And I remember reading this book years and years ago. It's more about business than the stuff we're talking about today. But they were talking about the same thing with taking a break from the media. And they were like, and this will date the book for you. Don't worry. If a princess dies in the middle of the night in a tunnel in France, and you're on a cruise ship in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, somebody will still tell you about it if it's that big of a deal. And by the way, that's not even that big of a deal. I don't remember whose book it was. It might have been like Harry Beckwith or someone like that. But it was something like Selling the Invisible or something would be the book that it was in. And that is one of the most valuable things you can realize. You don't have to care about everything. Even things that are intrinsically important, but are they important to you? Do they affect your life? And can you do anything about them? And even if you could do something, you can't do something about everything. Even all the things you actually do care about and could, you still have to guard your time and your effort and your money and your attention. Because you are a limited being with limited time. You need to sleep every day. You need recreation every day. You need to see to your interpersonal relationships every day. You need to see to your job every day. How much time do you have for all this shit? Well, remember this. The goal of the propagandist would be every waking moment you are not otherwise occupied. Their currency is your time and your attention. If you accept that in of itself, you'll get better at all the stuff we talked about today. With that, let's go ahead and wrap things up. I want to remind you guys there's a lot of ways you support the show and get deeper involved in our community. We don't have an official launch date yet, but I mentioned this yesterday. I'll be talking to Tom this week. We're going to work this out exactly when. We're about to launch the 4th round of the Become Dangerous with ChatGPT course. This is for entrepreneurs or people that are, trying to start a company. At least they're going to start some sort of business or side hustle, something where you're going to build brand and sell online. That's what this is designed for. It is a 40-day boot camp type tactical training. We've been through it 3 times now, and it has worked well for the people who showed up and did the work. It is it's a simple course to follow, but it requires discipline to see it all the way through, is the best way I would put it. In fact, the only complaints I've had with people is it was hard to do all the work. Well, I said it would be effective. I didn't say it would be easy. But it's simple in that if you do as instructed, you'll get through it. And if you do get to a sticking point, you won't just have me and Tom to help you. You have another 100+ classmates, plus usually a few big brothers and big sisters from a prior class that are hanging out there to help you get through those parts. They've seen it before, and they know how to help you through them. And you're able to then build a brand the way I used to consult with people to build. To do for your company what this course will allow you to do yourself. If you go back to the year like 2006, 2007, when I was in this business, you would have had to pay me between $20,000 and $35,000 to do this base level work alone. And it was a good chance that when I interviewed you as a prospective client, I only took about half of the clients that were willing to pay us. Because if I didn't believe I could actually help that company, I wouldn't take them. Now, adjust that for inflation, and then realize that once you can do this, you can keep doing this, fine-tuning your business. You can do it for other people. It is a fantastic way to get off the ground. I am teaching you, and we are teaching you to use AI. That is a piece of it. But what we're doing is replacing me with ChatGPT, but knowing how to operate it so that you can make it do the things that you need it to do to get the results you're looking for. And so you can recognize when you're not getting the right results, how to alter course to make it happen. I'm going to guess it'll be about 4 to 6 weeks before it goes on sale. I put this post out today on the blog. All you got to do, though, is go to jackslaws.com. There's a little thing about it up at the top of the page. Click on that, fill out a form. And the way it works is you'll get an email the day we've announced it's going on sale, about 15 minutes before it goes on sale, with a link. You click that link, you go, there's a countdown clock. And when it hits 0, it's like the movie Rat Race. It's a race. It's the race. I'm winning. And I don't know if you are. You get it filled out as quickly as possible. If you're one of the first 100 people to sign up, you're in. If you don't, you got to wait to round 5. And we're probably going to do 2 of these this year. So I would get in on this one if you want to get in on it. Next up is just, you can always do your online shopping starting at tspaz.com. That's TSPAZ, tspaz.com. Yesterday, I had the DeWalt electric pruners for you. Today, I have the knockoff ones by a company called Yawv, Y-A-W-V. It's in black and yellow colors. It uses the DeWalt battery. These are bare tool, $50. If you're a Makita user or a Milwaukee user, they also make them for those platforms as well. It's a fantastic tool for doing all your pruning this time of year. It saves a lot on stress on the hands. People with smaller hands, kids, women, older people, people with carpal tunnel, etc., really appreciate using these tools. But I'll tell you, even a dude like me, I can prune my ass off. I don't want to. Why wouldn't I use science for a better life? Physical science enabling a better life is what this type of tool is. And you can always find everything I recommend at tspaz.com. Thank you for tuning in today, everybody. Tomorrow, I have an interview, and I'm looking for who it is. I know it's an expert council member. That's who I thought it was. It's Ryan Steva, the Homestead consultant, will be with me tomorrow. Last time I had him on, it was a fantastic interview. I expect this to be no different, so make sure you catch us live tomorrow. I'll be here 12 Central Daylight Time, as is, I would say, as always, as is typical with Ryan. When I have interviews, unless they can't make that time, I always put the interviews Wednesday at 12 Central Daylight or Central Time, whatever particular propagandized freaking time zone, whatever the hell it is, timetable we're in, right? Like, you talk about propaganda, imagine having so much power that people will willingly let you steal an hour from them one day a year on a promise that you'll give it back later. That's what daylight savings time really is. With that, take care, guys. Catch you tomorrow with that episode with Ryan Steva.